Westworld Season 2 tries to end with a big twist. This shouldn't come as a surprise, considering the kind of show Westworld is, but what is surprising and disappointing is how thoroughly this twist fails to land. What's doubly galling is that Lost, another mystery-centric show from over 10 years ago, pulled off a similar sort of twist with ease. So it goes without saying, this video contains spoilers for Westworld up to the end of Season 2 and Lost up to the end of Season 3. The surprise post-credits scene of the Westworld Season 2 finale, where William exits the elevator only to be subjected to a fidelity test and a broken version of reality, wants to be a big mind-bending twist, but more or less fails. Now, by fail, I don't mean that the scene is bad. I'm not here to talk about the quality of the show. We're just going to take it as granted that it's fine. The problem we want to discuss is the unnecessarily complicated presentation of the scene and how this undercuts its intended effect. So, earlier in the episode, we saw William getting ready in the elevator, loading his gun, grabbing his knife, prepping to attack Bernard and Dolores. We then saw Bernard get in the same elevator, now empty. We're left to ask, okay, where's William now? Later, we see him on the ground at the Delos base camp. Now there's a gap between William riding the elevator down and William recovering at base camp. And it's a confusing gap because it's hard to imagine William reached the bottom of the elevator, changed his mind, and then just left. It was too decisive a moment for him to have had nothing happen, so we're left wondering what did happen. Now, questions are good for a show like this, especially in the season finale, but questions can start to feel like plot holes when they interface with facts. Taking Bernard out of the equation, asking what happened when William left the elevator is very interesting, because it would need to be something big if it turned him back to the beach to just bide his time. With Bernard, though, we know the two should have crossed paths, and that they didn't gives William a limited time frame for going on his own little mysterious adventure. And we have no indication that he was doubtful enough to turn back, even as he probably should have been. We needed an extra moment at the end of this last scene, a pause, an expression of fear, something to indicate that he had any doubt whatsoever, which would encourage us to consider him leaving the elevator as a choice. But whatever, that's not a big thing. Where it gets big is with the addition of the post-credits scene. It starts as, supposedly, the rest of William's elevator ride. He gets out, runs into his daughter Emily, and there's the forge, now looking very old and abandoned. They go to a location that looks exactly like the room where Delos was tested, a room that should not be a short walk away, and we learn that William is in a program being tested for fidelity, I guess. Actually, it's hard to know what is going on in this scene. William says,
"I'm already in the thing, aren't I?"
But Emily says no.
No.
But then they begin the test process, which would imply that he is. So is she lying? Is she drawing a meaningless distinction between being a simulation within the forge and being a host in the real world? Is Emily herself a host? She's behaving very differently, enough that she feels similar to Delos' son in the forge, who was himself just a partial recreation. If so, that's pretty cool, very poetic, I like it. But wait, why is the forge area in such disarray? Maybe this is a simulation where we're running William through his entire time through the park as a way of testing his fidelity, but if that's the case, why is the simulation of this area so drastically different from how it actually looked at the time of the events themselves? So a good theory would be maybe this is some years in the future, long after the park has fallen into complete disarray, and the forge is just in an endless loop, testing William as a way of giving us one final torture of the guy. But okay, does that then mean that the park has been recreating all the events of the first two seasons with its own bespoke hosts over and over? Also, is the forge entirely contained by this host version of Emily? It's possible, I guess, but so far we only understand the personification of the forge as the face of a much larger system. And we also know that recreated personalities are more stable in simulations than they are in the real world. And we saw just half of the forge's code drive Abernathy into complete rampancy, so I don't know, whatever, it's probably fine. But wait, if this is a future where an abandoned forge is just running a William simulation in the park on an endless loop, then this doesn't even answer the question of what the hell actually happened when William hit the bottom of the elevator earlier in the episode. No explanation so far actually interfaces the original elevator scene and the post-credits scene in a literal way. They're all just recreations that aren't physically connected to the real William. We have to to go on what we know with the evidence that we have, otherwise our theories are just speculative fan fiction, and what we know is just downright confusing because really the continuity here is false. These are two different time periods, these are two different people, these events are only aesthetically related. Yet we're tricked into thinking that isn't the case, but never given that moment of release where we realize what's actually going on. It's like a bait and switch without the switch. Or maybe I'm wrong and they're just the same event somehow because the show says so and I can't imagine what the future is. I could go on. The point is, it's a thoroughly confusing scene in part because no one explanation is 100% backed up by the evidence that we have. It's hard to theorize about what this scene could imply for the future of the show because we don't know when this is happening. We don't know if this is happening. And even within itself, it points in so many different directions it borders on irrelevant. The result is a scene whose hypothetically tremendous bomb of a twist is deeply undercut by a refusal to clarify literally anything. All of this reminds me of the Season 3 finale of Lost, which gave us a story about island leader Jack falling back into alcoholism and dealing with a divorce. Now, watching this episode for the first time, we already know basically everything there is to know about Jack. We know he's an alcoholic, we know he's got daddy issues, we even know that he got tattoos. So at the start, there's a mix of confusion and disappointment at seeing Jack's ridiculous beard and alcoholic stupor. We've never seen him with a beard like that before, so we're not sure when this takes place in his past, which leads to incredulity because it's like, okay, you're telling me there's another episode of sad alcoholic self-abuse that we just never saw? But then, in the final moments of the episode, Jack meets up with Kate. And they're talking off the island and you're thinking, wait, they didn't know each other before the island? What the heck is this? Have we been lied to this entire time? And then he says,
we have to go back, Kate.
And you realize, oh, wait a minute, this was a flash forward and now they're off the island. But double twist, they have to go back to the island? What? In my opinion, this is a fantastic twist. It's a flash forward disguised as a flashback by adopting all of the pieces of flashbacks we recognize, but the signs are all there if you pay attention. Which means watching the episode a second time is rewarding because it seems so obvious once you know what's coming. As for the twist itself, the third season at this point has been building up to the introduction of a freighter off the shore of the island attempting to rescue the castaways. Before this revelation, we're just hoping for contact with outside people. But with this twist, our speculation shifts. Okay, so they do get off the island, or anyway, Kate and Jack do. How? When? How far in the future is this? None of these questions are frustrating because they don't interface with any information we already have. They're entirely open-ended. What they do accomplish, however, is broadening the scope of what Season 4 might be about. Now the tension isn't, will they get off the island? It's, who gets off the island and why do they need to go back? These questions expand the scope of the show's future without limiting the possibilities of its present, and they're clear questions. No one's confused by the reality of what we've seen, nothing is contradicted. The implications are stated outright, but they're so far outside of what we understand the show to be up until this point that we're now left to speculate how the show will grow to fit those implications. In short, it's not just a twist for the sake of being a twist, it's a twist that enriches the world of the show and changes the context of everything that came before, which then raises the stakes for everything that might come after. Westworld's finale twist is too muddy to pull off the same kind of punch. Without it, we can imagine Season 3 playing out as a war between Bernard and Dolores in the real world. Throw the twist into the mix though, and what does it change? No, I'm asking, what does it change? I don't know. All it really tells us is that a thing happens in the future, maybe. Like, maybe there's an apocalyptic future thing going on here, which is cool, but if that's what they wanted to tease, they should have just done that. As much as I enjoy Westworld, it's really frustrating to watch when every little thing has to be part of some big game-changing narrative machination. It's like everything has to be an existential labyrinth, which is fine, but in this case I can't even speculate about what the solution to the labyrinth could be or even mean, because every aspect of the labyrinth is simultaneously too vague and too specific to make sense. It interfaces with too many facts in too many different ways to broaden the scope of the show's future, because no one can even agree on what literally is happening. And don't come at me in the comments saying, oh, but Lost did the same thing. Lost may have been overzealous with what it qualified as a mystery, but at least it announced every single thing that it wanted you to be asking about. There was always a big dramatic musical stinger, or a cinematic dolly in so that somebody's face fills the screen. In Westworld, it's not even clear what's a mystery and what's just something they forgot to include. Oh, is there a secret motive behind this conversation? What's Dolores really thinking? What if everyone's a host? Like in season 2, there are all these flash forwards or flashbacks, and it's actually really hard to keep track of when you're watching because the costumes are the same, the setting is the same, the characters are the same. Westworld and Lost are using all the same tools. Westworld may have a bigger budget and be able to say a cuss, but at least Lost was honest about what it was. Big, dumb, dramatic soap opera schlock. And that's why it's great. A good twist gets you to ask a question that you wouldn't otherwise have thought to even ask. It uses the foundation of the known as a bridge to the unexpected. But the unexpected vitally must feel like it was obvious after it was revealed, and it has to fit in with the facts we already have. We don't know what we know in this scene. We don't even know what we don't know in this scene. We can't even interpret what is unexpected because there's a non-zero chance that this whole thing is happening inside a computer. So really, it's not even a twist because we can't even be sure what it's twisting, which means it's just a scene? Westworld Season 2 ends with a scene from the television series Westworld. Mystery solved. A+, gold star. Special thanks go to Logan McQuiston, Austin McCauley, Amy Mims, and Richard Daly. They are my $10 a month patrons over at patreon.com/LTAS. For just $1 a month, you can get my updates on all of the videos that I'm working on and all the other projects I'm working on. For $5 a month, you get access to my notes and scripts and outtakes and all kinds of other behind-the-scenes materials. Good enough, whatever, fuck it. It's in there somewhere, sure. And then, of course, $10 gets your name read aloud in the credits, which is the thing people want and like, which I don't understand, but I am very happy to provide that service for you in exchange for $10 of your hard-earned cash. Now, the Patreons are going to be paused for July and August of 2018, which means nobody's going to get charged for either of those 2 months. However, you will still get access to all of my updates and all of the top-tier, behind-the-scenes content you crave, even if you don't get charged for it. So if I were you, I would pledge a lot of money and then get the stuff that you want and then de-pledge before you get charged, like some kind of criminal. The next couple of months are going to be really up and down for this channel, so I suggest that you at least give me a follow over on Patreon to keep up to date with all of the weird, random things that are going on in my life. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you again in another video, maybe one about Twin Peaks eventually. Oh boy, we see you then.